is much simpler than we've been led to believe. It's not that complicated to get the results that you want. I'm going to give you an example here in a moment of how simple it is. And I want to give you a tool, as I said before, that you can leave here with, that you can use to change how you think in the moment and to change it ongoing. Are you up for it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So, obvious about you want to go further, faster. How do you do that? Number one, and by the way, I'm going to give you 5 things that speakers do that cost them across the board. You can write these down or take a picture of whatever you want. But these are the 5 speaker mistakes. And when I say speaker mistakes, how we interact with people, they happen when we're up here. Number 1 is personal and psychological emotional prep. They don't prepare themselves. How much time did Carlos have to prepare before she yanked him up here and had him speak? 0. Well, he did a great job with being Carlos, didn't he? Because he said he got up there, it was really great. But he said, I see half this room is, crunchy, and half the people are toast, and so on and so forth. So that was his words of helping himself feel comfortable and doing what he does as he speaks. Does that make sense? Yes. But how many of you, by the way, Carlos, would you do a better job if you had to do that same thing over again now? Hell yeah. Okay? And the reason being is because now he's had time to prepare himself psychologically, personally, and all those things before he hits the stage. If Barb had said to him, Carlos, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to bring you up here in 10 minutes. And in 10 minutes, I'm going to have you show me how to make a peanut butter sandwich. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I need you to give me every detail as though I'm a 3rd grader. As though I don't know anything. As though I'm from another planet and have to be told everything. Do you think Carlos could prepare for that, yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely, because that's just preparation, and this is what most people don't do. Here's what people do. They will prepare their speech. They'll do this, they'll do slides, and I've seen people read from cards and so on and so forth. But when they hit the stage, you can tell that something's going on inside them. How many of you have experienced speakers like that, by the way, presenters like that, going on inside them? I can see it in Carlos in here. He's making stuff up as he's going along, and he wasn't prepared to do that. He didn't prepare. I could see it in his body. I could see in everything that he was doing that he was not prepared to make that happen. He was not emotionally ready for that. This is the biggest mistake people don't do. How to do that, how to put themselves in that state that they show up certain, confident, and all those things and get the job done. Raise your hand if this makes sense.
Yes.
Number 2, prep the stage and the audience before. Now, he did a little bit of a job. Barbie did a great job of it as well. But when I say before, I mean before you even hit the stage. Every time I go, as Nick said, the last time you saw, I didn't see you. Just
Yeah.
okay.
I was waving, but.
Yeah. Nick! It's Nick! Okay. There's 10,000 people. There's 10,000 people out there. I presented to them before I even came onto the stage. Before I got to the stage. There's something that I can do. I did it with you as I was standing outside with Andy just a little while ago with Nick. And by the way, I want to introduce one of my mentors. You're going to be talking tomorrow?
No,
Oh, no.
I'm just here.
This is Dr. Andreas. He's one of my mentors. An unbelievable teacher, mentor. Give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen. I'm always here to learn as well. I know a lot of stuff, but I'm always here to learn and to learn from. And one of the things that he's taught me with regard to being able to impact and interact with people is just that. Knowing exactly where I am and knowing what I need to do to say to be able to impact you at that level. And if you get the chance to work with this guy, dig him up and find him. He's unbelievable. Okay? But doing something to prepare the audience. Let me give you an example. Really silly example, but it'll give you an example of what I mean with regard to impacting your audience before you even see them, before you interact with them. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever done this? You're in your car, radio is blasting, windows are rolled up, and you're sitting there at the stoplight and you feel somebody looking at you. And you look over and there they are. Wait a minute if that happens to you. Okay? Or vice versa. You're sitting in your car, same thing, and you look over and you see perhaps an attractive person, and you look over at them, you're checking them out, and they catch you. And they look over and there you are. Maybe that happens to you. And you always do the same thing. When they catch you, you go. What happened? What happened? It's like clockwork. Or here's another example. How many of you have ever been thinking about somebody, and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's there? Now, at the risk of sounding too California unicorns and cosmic, it's a very, very real thing. I taught it, as I said, I taught at University of Southern California for many, many years, and what I taught to engineers, and they have a word for that as well. But one of the things that the guys, they brought it in, I was teaching this process, if you will, and they brought in, how many of you have heard of Kirlian photography? Yeah. And what it is, if you don't know what it is, it's a camera that takes a picture of your energy, your aura, man. Okay? We all put off electromagnetic energy. And when you put your attention and intention on somebody else, two things happen. At least these two things happen. Your energy grows, it gets bigger, and the second thing is that they feel it. They feel it. Just your intention and attention on somebody else, and obviously you do it in a very specific way, it makes a big difference, a huge difference. When you put your intention, that's what happens when you're sitting in the car. You look at somebody, and you put your intention on them, your energy grows, and they feel it. And they showed this. Now it's moving. It used to be just still cameras. You guys have seen it before, where they take a picture of the lead with a person, and you see the energy around them. Oh, what they did was they hook them up to the EEG machine, and they say, okay, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about your wife, or your lover, or your husband, or whatever. And when they do, it grows. So they say, think about something that you're afraid of, and it shrinks. So you want to detach yourself from your audience? Be scared. You want to impact your audience before you hit the stage? Think about it. And I always say just love, okay? Next, again, speaking and not presenting. Talking to them as though you're just having a conversation with them, or you're just talking to them the way that you've always talked, and so on and so forth, versus presenting them, impacting them, and knowing and finding out what their needs are, and so on and so forth, and finding out exactly what they need. Connection and enrollment dynamics, meaning, and by the way, everything that I'm doing from the stage, I'm demonstrating what I'm talking about. How many of you right now are just intrigued about what I have to say? Okay? So you're connected in that way. I say this facetiously, but I'm doing what I teach people to do. And the reason why you're still sitting here right now versus going, this guy's boring. Yeah, I'm amazing, yes. But the reason you're here is because of what I'm doing with you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the other thing is call to action and certainty. Instead of just asking people to do something, they want to do something, causing them to do something. And on the point that I just made, all the things that you're doing, think about this. How many of you, I mean, all of you, I don't even have to ask the question, but all of you, every single one of you, jumped to your feet and said yes? Jumped to your feet when I said, stand up! Yes! Okay? Why? Why? Because I asked you to? Well, if I asked you to jump over a bridge, will you go jump? No, because of the setup before it. Because of my certainty, for lack of a better term, causing you to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, these are the things that speakers fail to do. Even Carlos, when you were doing this, his uncertainty about how to, okay, just put it together, and then if you feel like it, do this. Versus, all right, put it together right now. And by the way, if you'd done everything up to there, she'd been following the instructions, right? Put it together and do this. Okay? But that type of certainty, most of us don't have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Fabulous. And here's the 5 ultimate presenter must-haves. And your audience, by the way, I truly believe this, they deserve to see you and feel you function and how you function at your absolute optimum. I wrote something down when Barb was doing her presentation, and that is, what you said before is he said that people speak or present to other people the way that we see things. Okay? In other words, as Carlos was talking to her, that's the way he sees it. Okay? I'd just like to add to that, and it's not just the see. It's the see, the hear, and the feel. The see, the hear, and the feel. When you cause people to feel something, then you make that connection, and you start to move forward. And they feel you, and that is you at your optimum. You at your optimum is not somebody just speaking a bunch of words. You at your optimum are passionate. You at your optimum, that's when they feel it. That's when you make that connection. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So here's those 5 things. Number 1, connect, disconnect model. Connection is a must, but an undisturbed audience will not buy. Connection builds trust. Now you guys know this intellectually, but I'm going to show you what I mean here in a second. Disconnection creates urgency. Pleasure and pain, pleasure, pain, solution. That's the model, right? At least, at the very least, write that down. This is the model. Pleasure, pain, solution. And levity and humor are pull tools. What that means is it allows people to get off the hook for a moment. I've done it over and over again. I'm not just having you laugh just for the fun of it. Everything is calculated, for lack of a better term. Here's what I mean by that. If you just give a speech to somebody and say, okay, do you like this, or so on and so forth, people are not going to do something. You must cause people to feel some sort of emotion, and specifically to cause them to feel some sort of pain. Take it away from them sometime, or cause them to feel some sort of guilt, or some sort of pain, or some sort of emotional pain towards it. Why? Because when you do, there's a model that I teach, that when you do, and you show them that pain, then here's what they know about you, is that you can cause them to feel pain, and they don't want that. Your entire nervous system is designed not to do that. So guess what they're going to do? I'll give you an example. Put your books down. Stand up! Yes! Part of the reason you're doing this, and again, I divulge all. Stay standing, please. I divulge all. Part of the reason you're doing this is because I caused you to feel pain earlier on. Anybody remember how? Anybody remember how? I did it a couple of times. I told you my story. How many of you felt for me in that story? It's a true story. And how many of you, and by the way, there were a couple other things. I accused you of a couple things. And because of that, what happens with you, and again, this is a model that I teach that you guys will absolutely love, and that is that when you cause people to do that, and then you let them off the hook, then they feel better, they're connected to you, but then they also know, I don't want to feel that again, so let me pay attention. Raise your hand if this makes sense. I know that I'm going by very quickly with this, but there's that formula works, and it is just that. Cause you to feel good, cause you pain, cause you pleasure, cause you pain, and then give you the solution. And the solution in this case right now was standing up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So it's more than me just asking you to do that. You're compelled to do that now. And I'll bet if I asked you now why you're here, more of you would speak up. We don't have time for it, but you'd speak up more because, by the way, that's another way I cause you pain. Make sense?
Yes.
I know this might sound manipulative. I don't have a lot of time to do this, but it might sound manipulative. But it is a way of presenting versus speaking. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Give yourselves a hand and have a seat. Fabulous. The next thing is the predictive emotional impact learning. Now, I'm going to keep going back to it just because it's so fresh. Carlos spoke to her and he taught her how to make the sandwich. He taught her how to make the sandwich. So what? You think she's going to remember it? No. How many of you are going to remember it? No. But there's a way of teaching people something. I call it predictive emotional impact learning. And I'll give you the example first. Everybody look up here for a second. How many of you have ever seen the FedEx sign?
Yes.
The logo. Okay? Here's a question. Which way does the arrow face?
Right.
How many of you say right?
Right.
How many of you say left? How many of you are going, what arrow? Okay. Watch it. This is what I'm talking about. This is predictive emotional impact learning. How many of you see the arrow? If you don't see the arrow, look between the E and the X. Okay. Raise your hand if you see the arrow now. Okay. Doesn't matter which way it's showing, but for the rest of your life, you'll never be able to look at that sign again the same way. You're always going to see the arrow. See it? Now, by the way, what she just did right here, she went, oh yeah, it's called an aha moment. That's called predictive impact learning. And that's what you want to do with your people so that they get it. So they walk away with something that's going to stick with them for the rest of their freaking life. You see it?
Finally.
Finally, okay, great. For those of you that don't, it's right here, okay?
We're a little amazed.
It's okay, yeah. But are you going to remember it for the rest of your life, yes or no?
Yeah.
It's always there. As a matter of fact, when that comes up, you're not going to ever be able to unsee it. It's always going to be there. And that's the way you want to impact your audiences. With that kind of impact, people, as I said before, people are more willing to move in the direction of what you want because they have been impacted versus being spoken to. They've been presented to versus being spoken to. Raise your hand if you got that. Okay?
Yes.
Fabulous. Next, move your body. Motion is emotion, and emotion is connection and trust. Make your audience move their body. Mark your audience. It's a process, that, but again, without going into it, there's a process of being able to connect to every single person in the audience. It's not just looking people in the eyes. A lot of people do that, and that's great and everything, but there's a process of connecting with everybody in the audience, marking your audience so that you can cause them to be impacted, anchoring your stage and your platform. What that means is, I said it before, everything that I do, I stood here, and I stood here. And I'm not just walking up and down. Everywhere that I stand, everywhere I'm anchoring you to. Anchoring means I cause an emotion to that spot. And again, this might sound complicated, but these are all little tools, little things that when you learn them, they're very, very simple. You own the stage. You own your presentation. Raise your hand if that makes sense.
Yes.
Breathe. Use your body. The one thing that Carlos wasn't doing, and I was watching Barb as well, is that when we get going, we stop breathing. Whatever happens, we breathe up high like this, we stop breathing. And what happens with that is we cut off the blood flow to our nervous system, to our brain, and we get, how do I delicately, we get stupid. How many of you know Carlos was smarter than that when he was up here doing that? You know he was, right? You knew, as he watched her for the first time, act like Winston, and she's doing this and so on and so forth. You knew Carlos knew better. Raise your hand if you knew that. You know Carlos. You're going, Carlos, we love you, dude. Come on, snap out of it, man. But I was watching Carlos, and Carlos stopped breathing. Carlos was nervous up here, and even though he played it off as being unnervous, he stopped breathing. Because he stopped breathing, he wasn't able to think at the level that he knows he could. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You gotta breathe. Next, move your body and their body. Okay? Move yours and their body. A mind can only absorb as much as the body can endure. Okay? You can only absorb as much as the butt can endure. Most of us, how many times have I had you up already? It's one of the first things I had you doing is moving your body. You want to get your audience to respond, to interact, to react with you as quickly as possible. Don't wait, because as soon as you do, then what happens is they start moving in that 90% again. Find and create what they want and why they want. Here's the only thing I want, not the only thing, but one thing I want you to write this down. I want you to remember this. It's a really great tool. If you don't ask them what they want, write this down, everybody, please. Or if you can take a picture of it, do so. If you don't ask them what they want, then on some level, they know you don't know what they want. If you don't ask them what they want, they know you don't know. And on some level, they're going to feel like you're trying to get them to do something for you and not for them. If you don't ask, and I mean ask what they want. Now, obviously, I did my homework. I asked Andy. I talked to Nick a little bit about you guys finding out what you want. And I have my opinion. I even showed you what I believe you want. What's the first thing I did? I asked you what you want. I used it as a tool, but I asked you what you want. And the reason I do that is because, here's the example. Okay? Everybody look up here for a second. I mean this. If you, for the next 9 months, no, for the next year, you work like you've never worked before. You bust your butt, you get up early, you stay up late, you sacrifice. You dedicate your time, your energy, your money, and you do whatever it takes, no matter what. In 1 year, I promise you, at the end of 1 year, I get to take my son, and he and I are going to go to Hawaii. That's it. How many of you are willing to do that work now? You're going, screw you, seminar boy. What about me? I literally had somebody call me that, by the way. Seminar boy. Jesus. Here's my point. How many of you were disappointed when I said, because you went, yeah, I'll do it. Wait a minute, what about me? How many of you felt that? Okay. That's what you do to your audience if you don't ask them, because on some level they're going, okay, he's manipulating me, or he's doing this, or that's not what, and you cause them to go into that 90% again. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You got to ask them, even though you don't have the opportunity to ask every single person, at least you know inside. And I call it a setup, but the stuff that I did before then, I let you know why I'm here, why I'm doing it. I asked you if you're on board with that as well. I gave you even a saying. that we're all here. We have the opportunity to lead other people. How many of you want to be a shining example for other people so we can make a difference in our beautiful country? All of you. So I know you want that, but that's my way of asking you to get you enrolled and get you to recognize that, wait a minute, that what I'm going to teach you is something that you want to grasp and something you want to do now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay. Use we and not I. Obviously, you're going to have to use your I several times. I do. No pun intended. Okay. And revisit their why over and over again. I have gone back over that several times. I've asked you several times, is that what you want? Is that what you want? And you all keep going back to, yes, this is what I want. Okay? Pleasure, pain, solution. I already told you about. Okay? And lastly, define who you are to you and to them. And here's what that means. First off, who you are and how you define yourself speaks as loud or louder than your words and your message. If you don't tell them, then they don't know what you need them to know. I thank you, Nick. That was awesome. You read from the thing there and everything. And your introduction, I have that honor and that privilege of having somebody introduce me before I come up. But I didn't stop there. I told you about myself, my heart, and what I was all about. It's painful for me to share that story every single time I do it. But I share it with you because I want you to know where I'm coming from. And that's my identity. That's who I am. And when people get that, then they recognize that you're genuine. And everybody wants to be genuine. Everybody wants to be connected. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay? And man, if you don't tell them, and by the way, this is the hardest thing. One of the things, and a lot of people say to me, okay, Joseph, that's easy for you. You know, you speak to thousands of people, you know, every single month. And you know, you're with Tony Robbins and so on and so forth. And I don't have that privilege. I never had that. And I have stage fright and I have all that stuff and everything. But I got to share with you how I came into doing what I'm doing was actually quite by accident. I'm an author. My first book I wrote with I'm not assuming that you all know. How many of you know or know Tony Robbins? So most people here. And so I've known Tony for almost 30 years now. And earlier on, we were just friends. I've gone to the seminars, made some changes and everything. We were friends. And then my music career changed. I was a musician for a long time, and my mom got really sick, and I needed to do something else. So I went to Tony and I said, listen, let's write this book together. And he agreed, and he said, okay, but here's the terms. If we write this book together, then you have to become the head, because he knew about my background as a psychologist. He said, you have to become head trainer for my organization. I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I would show up at every single seminar that he did, and I'd manage the trainers, and I'd train the trainers, and all those things, and it's an army of people. And that was just my job. And we do a seminar every month, sometimes two every month. I was always there. And one of the events that he does is called the UPW, which is the one that Nick was at. It's a 4-day event, and at the time, Tony taught all 3 days, and on the last day, he had a young lady who taught the health and wellness seminar. And we were in Australia, and it's been, gosh, I think it was 97 when this happened. 97 when this happened. And so I get a phone call Sunday, and by the way, that was a Monday that they did that 4th day. Sunday night at midnight, I get a phone call from Tony, and he's panicking. If you know Tony, he doesn't panic. Okay? And he's panicking. He goes, Joseph, he says, I have to leave, and Deb, the person that does the seminar, is something happens, she can't come. And he says, I need you to do tomorrow. Now, I freaked first. I said, okay, I'll do it. I got myself all conditioned to do it, and I showed up, and all night long, I didn't go to sleep. I studied all the material. I did everything. I got everything. I remember what they sent me all the prep and everything, and I prepared myself. And the next morning, I showed up there. I stepped out there on stage. And by the way, what happens, and this was maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000 people there, which is a pretty substantial crowd of people. And at the end of the night before, Tony actually, engaged them in this really emotional thing and from the heart and everything, and they fall in love with this guy. And rightfully so, he's amazing. And so I show up the next morning ready to, carry on. And I showed up there, I walked out on stage, and I realized something the instant I walked on stage. And that is that Tony never told them that he wasn't going to be there and that I was going to be there. And so I walked out on stage expecting them to be in that same state, and they look at me like this. And someone started to get up and leave and walk away. And that rattled my cage. Because I'm sitting there going, oh, wait a minute, it's not wrong, you know. And I had to also present this thing. So very, very quickly, and that's where a lot of this that I teach came from. I had to get myself together and to get my presentation together to change it. I had to put myself in that state that I talked to you about before to present. And because of that event, I've taught that event now every single one since that time. The woman never came back. I've taught every single one. And now, of that event, of the 4-day event, I teach 2.5 days. Tony teaches 1.5 days. I teach 2 because of that. And from that, I grew. So I had to learn. I always say this to people: never follow pets or children or Tony Robbins. Because I fall in love with them. So, one of our greatest assets is our ability to connect with others and influence them to take action. But here's the thing. And what I said before, everybody wants to. Everybody wants to. You wanted to do stuff before. And I love this thing here. Speakers talk and facilitate, presenters change lives. This is how I feel that we all should be. Our people need us. We need to get out there and get them. What a great picture, huh? Here's the thing. And by the way, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on this. The reality is, how many of you, this appeals to you? Traveling first class around the world. Because that's what you're, by the way, how many of you, when you think of your future, from the money that you'll make from your business and so on and so forth, plan on flying a coach? How many of you have ever flown first class, by the way? Okay, so you know. Kind of hard to go back, you know. Flying first class, VIP treatment and accommodations. One of the greatest things that I enjoy is when I go to the airport, when I arrive on the other end, there's always somebody there with a sign. And now it's iPads. It says, Mr. McClendon. It really is a great thing. Oops, sorry. Making a real difference. Now, and again, that's my real purpose here, is making a difference, leaving a legacy. And choosing and when and where, like what you said before earlier, when and where you want to work, what you want to do, who you want to be. It's your choice, not somebody else's. I'm assuming that you got most of you, or at least a good number of you, are already at that place here where you're starting to call your own shots. I heard somebody say earlier, you turn in your paycheck, you're not doing that, or your job, you're not doing that anymore. So times that, times 10, being able to do whatever it is that you want to do. I became a father late in life. I have a 9.5-year-old son, and one of the greatest privileges of my life is the way I grew up. I have a great dad, he's still with us, but my father had to work. He was gone all the time. He wasn't around me all the time, and I am able to set my life up where I'm in my son's life pretty much every single day. And I get to bring him with me to the seminars sometimes, okay? Unlimited potential for growth. Guess who gets to set your limit on your price? You do. And just to give you some insight, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I'm going to kind of give you some insight as to where this leads. I'll just share this. One of the other things that I do in terms of, remember, I'm not just presenting from the stage. That's one aspect that is very, very lucrative. But I do also what I call ultimate performance coaching, and help people and do seminars and so on and so forth. And I don't do that so much anymore, just because, like I said, my lifestyle the way it was. But when I stopped doing that, at the top, I would charge somebody $350,000 a year to meet with them basically 12 times. Or you could use that kind of money. And I don't say that to brag or to boast, it's just that's what's out there. People need and they want to be presented to, they want to be impacted. Okay? Unlimited wealth and income creation. And I didn't put it up there, but money while you sleep as well. Sometimes it's one of the greatest things I enjoy in my life right now is whether I go to work or not, there's going to be a certain amount of cash in my bank account every single month. And I hope this doesn't sound arrogant. Again, this is us talking. This is where you're headed, right? How many of you want these kinds of things? Say aye.
Aye.
So, oops, I'm going the wrong way. I just love her. So remember this. Because everybody wants that stuff. And everybody says that they will do it and they want it, so not everybody does. Because the reality is, the thieves of our dreams, they always have been, and they're always backed by that conversation that's going on in the back of your head. And that is procrastination, hesitation, fear of failure, fear of success, laziness, and complacency. All of those things are fueled by the programming, that 90% that Barbara was talking about, that continues to go on with all of us. Let me give you a really quick example, because I told you I want to give you a tool. Okay? Let me ask you this first. How many of you have ever done this? Okay, I'm going to give you something that you're going to do outside of here as well. And it'll help you with whatever conversations you have going on. And again, I want to invite you to do something here in just a moment. But how many of you have ever done this? You're sitting in your house, and you go, oh, I need to go get the newspaper out of the kitchen. Or I need to go get the newspaper. And you stand up, and you go into the kitchen, and you're standing in the kitchen going, how did I come in here for? Raise your hand if you've ever done that. Okay? Now, we've all done that. Okay? But I want to give you a tool to utilize that very real, very predictable, very duplicatable thing to change how you think. Okay? If we had more time, we would do it, but I want to give you this so that you can do it. That's called a pattern interrupt. You're in a pattern of thought right here, whatever it is you're thinking about, watching television or whatever, and you think to yourself, okay, I got to go do this. And as soon as you stand up and move your body, you create what's called a scotoma in your brain. It's just a blank spot. It's a vacuum. And your brain goes, it's confused in that moment. But it's a vacuum, and the brain wants, what does a vacuum want, or what does nature want to do with a vacuum every single time? Fill it up. So your brain is going, give me something, give me something. But two things are happening. Number one, it's going, give me something. It's open. It needs something in that moment. But the other thing is, it's no longer in this state right here. It's no longer in that pattern. So here's your tool. Think fearful stuff, and then stand up and say, yes! And then pat yourself on the back and sit back down and do it again. That's it. How many of you can do that, by the way? I know it sounds ridiculously simple, but I guarantee here's what happens, because your brain goes this. Every time you do that, every time you are unresourceful or fearful or whatever, or any of that conversation that bothers you, every time you stand up and you create that vacuum, and then you smile and you say yes or whatever, it replaces that vacuum with this state. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Here's this state. You create that vacuum, your brain's going, give me something, and you go, yes! Then your brain replaces that, and you do it enough times, you will not be able to get back there to that. One of the things that we teach, I'm going to talk about here in a second, of not only, and by the way, I'm like this, that predictive teaching that I talked about, that's what I'm all about. Instead of you just coming to me or coming to something that I teach you, and you just have a good time and a bunch of notes, let's get a result. Let's get a result right then and there that you produce. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So your exercise, if you will, literally, you just sit down, and it doesn't matter what you think about, anything that causes you to feel fearful or unresourceful, and then jump up and change it, and pretty soon that will change inside of you. I know that's real quick, but it's an unbelievably simple and unbelievably effective tool. Raise your hand if you'll do it.
I'll do it.
When you say that. But willpower is a myth. It truly is. It is, because we all have willpower when we're excited. And motivation, as we talked about before, it's like a warm bath. We all need it, but it's a myth too. It's not that you're motivated when you do something. When you do something, it's because you're pulled to do it. Something in the future is what you're after. It's the carrot on the stick that makes you as a human being go. But here's what people do. They don't put the carrot on the stick. They put it right here in front of them, right down at that, and it scares the hell out of them. As well as the negative stuff, they put it in front of them. Does that make sense? Yeah. Literally. I get people when I come into the office, I go, listen, what do you want? Remember I always say, what do you want? And they'll sit down and they'll go, well, I don't want to feel this way anymore, Mr. McClendon. And I'm like, okay, great, what do you want? And they'll go, well, I feel like crap, I'm depressed, I'm suicidal. I go, what do you want? Yeah. And they go, and they start to get pissed off at me. I told you, I literally say these words. Depression washes over me like a scalding hot wave of debilitating emotion. This guy has words for it. And what does that tell me? It's right there in front of him, which it is for most of you as well. What's wrong is always available, and especially if we program ourselves to be that way over and over again. Raise your hand if this makes sense.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Always there. But most of us don't know how to, even the simplest thing right there, to help yourself get rid of it. If you're going through things where you struggle with not making enough money, struggle with your weight, struggle with getting yourself to do things and so on and so forth, it's all really, really clear. You said it best, take responsibility. In other words, and most of you have, my hat's off to you because most of you are already at that stage in your life where you go, yeah, it's me. But what you do about it, most of us don't know what to do about it. So I want to share something with you. By the way, the truth is activity is power. Activity is consistent, repeated action with emotional intensity until the outcome is surpassed. You don't go to the gym. If you want to build this muscle right here, you want to build your bicep, you don't go to the gym and go, okay, well, let me just lift this 10 times. You guys are, you've been around this kind of influence before. You go to the gym and you say, I want to build this bicep. And I say, okay, you got to lift that weight 10 times. Which one is going to do the best or do the most for you? Number 1 or number 10?
10.
Well, you guys ever heard this before? Usually there's somebody on this goes, number 11, damn it. Okay. And that's great, but you know what? That's going to be temporary because we've all, how many of you have ever gone on a diet and actually stuck to that diet for a day? Or 2? Or 3? Or whatever. That doesn't get the result. It's the day. That's activity after and after until you surpass your goal. It's not about that. Until you reach your outcome. So here's what I want to do. I want to introduce you. First off, thank you guys so much. Thank you for allowing me to share.
All right, so I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Life on Fire TV. And as always, I would be so grateful for you to like, comment, and share. And then also, I would love for you to check out what we're doing at lifeonfiremovement.com. So we are super excited. We have just rolled out something that I had been dreaming about and visualizing for literally 3 years, since before I started Life on Fire. So it is a game-changing personal development community, and you just have to check out what we're doing. So I want you to go from just watching Life on Fire TV to joining our tribe in the Life on Fire family. So go to lifeonfiremovement.com and check out what we're up to, and let us help you get your life and your business or career to the next level, and we'll do it together. So check out lifeonfiremovement.com, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Cheers.